Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
I am that dude, Bodkins. Patty to patty. It's ridiculous. No way. There's nobody else out there. He's your guy. Give a big round of applause for the one and only BodkinShow. I'm going to repeat that again, folks. I didn't stutter. Welcome to the Bodkins Show. Good evening, afternoon. I don't really know what to say when it's 4 o'clock. I don't really know if that's evening or afternoon. Evening if you're on the East Coast at 5, late afternoon, early evening if you're on the Central Time Zone. Good afternoon if you're on the West Coast. So good afternoon. I hope you just, mute the game because everybody gets tired of listening to stupid Tony Romo anyway. So mute the game. Listen to your boy Bodkins. Welcome to another great episode of the Bodkins Show. Of course, I am that dude as always, Bodkins. Mute the game. You don't want to listen to Romo. Listen to your boy Bodkins. We're going to be talking all things football, all things Jets. We got a little special guest joining us today, early spot even, as we got the AFC divisional round. Winner takes the Chiefs. Right now it's Cincinnati 17, Buffalo 10. Winner taking on the Chiefs. And to talk all things football, all things Jets, welcome to the program for the first time, host of Jets Chaos, and it seems to be chaos at their quarterback situation, Jermey Krevat. Jermey, thanks for joining me, my man.
What is up? What's going on?
How's it going? Let's start right now. This game going on. What's your thoughts right here? Cincinnati 17, Buffalo 10.
I'm pulling for the Bengals because I'm a Jets fan and I can't root for the Bills. It's like it's just kind of like wanted the Bills to beat Miami because they're a little bit more hated. Now we just need as Jet fans to get the Bills out of there just so we could say, well, at least nobody else in our division went very far in the playoffs either. So I think that the Bills are in big trouble here because they don't seem to be able to stop the Bengals. And
Joe Burrow's slicing and dicing them no matter what down and distance it is right now. Anybody who watches the show knows I have a huge heart on for Joe Burrow. Man crush, full on man crush. I think he's the coolest person walking God's green earth. So that's just my opinion. The kid is, it's snow. This game to me is what the Bills would want, right? Snow, cold, and the Bengals are just having their way with them on offense.
No, absolutely. They look like the team that's playing at home in the, with the friendly weather that they would have wanted for sure.
Yeah, now it's first and goal here. As Joe Mixon just got it. My guy Italy Jet just chimed in, said, "Sup, fellas? Sup, Italy Jet? Stick around. We're getting ready to talk some Jets." Jeremy, I got to ask you, how did you fall in love with the Jets? What's the story there? Everybody's got a story how they fell in love with their team and how they got into sports. So tell us a little bit about your story, my friend.
Well, up until before I was in fifth grade, I was a baseball guy, big, New York Mets fan in the early 80s. My brother turned me a Mets fan in the very late 70s. And football to me was just a bunch of guys piling into each other. I didn't, I was too young to see or understand. But around fifth grade, which was 1981, I started watching the Jets. At the end of the year, they were in the news a lot. They were actually winning games with these exciting players named Mark Gastineau and Mark Klecko and Richard Todd at quarterback and Wesley Walker and Freeman McNeil at running back. And I started watching, and they actually made the playoffs, and they played the Buffalo Bills in a wild card game. And that was the first game I remember vividly, like my first as a Jets fan. That's my earliest memory is rooting hard for the Jets. They're playing the Bills in a wild card game. They're losing, and they make this amazing comeback. They're at about the 20-yard line in the red zone, less than 2 minutes left to go in the game, and Richard Todd drops back and throws an interception. So it started with heartbreak. It started with heartbreak. I mean, keep in mind, I grew up in Brooklyn, so I was gonna like them, the Jets or the Giants, and end up obviously rooting for a New York team. But it started with absolute heartbreak, but I couldn't wait till the next year. And then it all started the next year with the Mud Bowl and, the famous Mud Bowl where the Jets played Miami and Richard Todd threw the 5 interceptions. And all of that pain, all of that trauma, from the Buffalo game to the way the Miami game ended the next year, just kind of set up the stage for the rest of my football life, or at least up till now.
Heartbreak after heartbreak, right?
Next 40 years, it was just heartbreak after heartbreak.
I mean, it's really not even heartbreak. They've been to what? Three. You're a couple years older than me, so about 3 AFC championship games that I can remember around that time in the last 40 years or so.
Yeah, well, since that AFC championship game where they lost to Miami, so there was 3 more.
Right, one with Bill Parcells, right? Maybe
right. Denver, 1998.
Yeah,
right, where they lost to Denver in the AFC championship game,
and then the 2 with Rex Ryan,
So
I mean, it's not even just heartbreak; it's just like bad team after bad team after bad team.
Yeah, I mean, except for those runs. I mean, we got the little taste of sprinkled in, right? So, people will think of the Jets and think 35, 40 years of just misery and being horrible. But there were great years mixed in, but that they all ended in heartbreak. I mean, we made our runs. We had our little run there in the mid 80s. We had our run at the end of the 90s. We were back in 2002 to 2004 with Herm Edwards, disappeared a little, came back with Rex Ryan. So we had our runs where we could believe we were good. One thing we were missing that we never had in all those years was a real quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, they're still on the search for one, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. I mean, I understand. I told you before we came there, I understand heartbreak as a Cubs fan. Yeah. I understand heartbreak, and that's very similar. Like, I'm 36. I'll be 36 in March. So it's very similar of dealing with 36 years, mostly heartbreak. I mean, 26, we've had some runs, and we did win the big one in 2016. So I definitely relate to that. So growing up in Brooklyn, it was Jets or Giants, and you chose Jets just because of Mark Gastineau and them boys?
Yeah, it just happens organically. I was watching the games, and that was the game. I remember I had a buddy, maybe he got me to watch the Jets. But, they played in Shea Stadium at the time, and I was a New York Mets fan. So it's just very natural that I would become a Jets fan at that time.
So let's talk about this Jets team this past year. I mean, started off really hot, had some really good promise, and then it seemed like Zach Wilson lost the locker room, lost his teammates. I was never a Zach Wilson guy. What's your take on Zach Wilson so far in his, 2+ years here in the NFL?
Well, it's been a huge disaster and a huge disappointment. I got to be honest, when they drafted him, I was really excited. I was a big Zach guy when he was coming out. I watched all his film when he was in BYU. I believed he had all the talent and ability to be great. I do know from, being a football fan for so long that there is something that's not measurable. So you never really know when you draft a quarterback out of the draft. There's just this ability that it's hard to measure. Will they be able to come into the NFL and adjust to the speed of the game, have that instinct on the field at the NFL level, be able to read the defenses, make their progressions, and just get a feel for the NFL game? I knew that if Zach was able to do that, we may have finally had our guy, but it just hasn't clicked. He's just lost.
He reminds me of the kid from, you ever seen the movie Draft Day, where everybody's so high on this quarterback, and then Kevin Costner, he doesn't. Yeah. They find out he didn't invite his teammates to his birthday. His teammates didn't come to his birthday party. That's kind of what Zach Wilson reminds me of.
Yeah, it's interesting because his best friend from the BYU team ended up dating his girlfriend when he broke up with her. So
how good of friends were they?
It shows that maybe they didn't exactly love him,
I thought they should have went with Fields. I thought Fields was, outside of Trevor Lawrence, was the best quarterback in that draft class when they took Zach Wilson instead.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't have been completely angry or went nuts if they would have taken Fields. I preferred Zach just because of the style of quarterback and the style of offense we were running. Mike, it's not that I didn't believe that Fields wouldn't be successful in the NFL. My concern, and it was just more of a concern, was I didn't have as much evidence in my mind because the way they played him in college was a very one look and run type of system. Like
Much like the Bears did this year.
Right.
Wait, if it ain't there, just run.
Just
and
do
it's
your
just
first
because we don't have the
read and run.
horses. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and to me, that wasn't a negative in that, I know he can't succeed in the NFL because that's not his fault. In college, they said one read and run. But to me, that was avoiding evidence. Like, okay, I don't have any evidence he's going to be in a pro system and be able to read, to his second and third progression, which is what you have to do to be a pocket passer. And we still don't have that evidence. We don't know that he's going to ever be that quarterback, but he certainly has that extra weapon that even if he's not, he's still going to be better than an ineffective pocket passing quarterback like Wilson.
And what's your take on Mike White and then just how he lost that whole locker room? Because like as an outsider in, it's just like that team loves Mike White, 3 cracked ribs and all, and they've kind of, like, hey, get out of here, you gilf hunter, and go someplace else.
Yeah, I don't know how much of the reports were true, but it would explain the firing of Mike LaFleur better than anything. Like if you really wanted to understand exactly why the Jets would have made that decision, nothing spells out, even the play on the field, because you could point to injuries and this and that. But if any of those reports are true, based on what we're hearing now and what went on in the locker room, that would be the primary reason to say, oh, yeah, you have to fire an offensive coordinator to let that kind of toxicity take over the locker room. And it was concerning, when they were wearing Mike White shirts, and it was just very much.
But I mean, if that's their guy, right? Like, why is Mike LaFleur being the scapegoat for the end of the year? Is it because like, hey, their owner seems to love Zach Wilson. I don't know if like he's, they're going on the nursing home hunts together, and speed dating or what, but like, why does he love them, but the players don't? Because like you said, they're out there rocking Mike White shirts, and why is then Mike LaFleur is being the sacrificial lamb?
Well, I mean, one theory is it may have like, you start to wonder about Mike, during the season, Zach Wilson made a comment after a game against New England where he was atrocious and, they only scored 3 points. He said, do you feel responsible?
And Zach said, no, I don't.
And he said, no, I don't. And at the time I thought, you know what? He had the yips. He was in a horrible mental state. They shouldn't even let him talk to the press. And he let that get out. And it's probably not. And I didn't think at the time that's who he really was. But now looking back at it, I'm starting to say, well, what if that is who he is?
I think he is. I think he reminds me of the, cocky, rich white kid, the privileged white kid that just had everything given to him and has never had faced adversity a day in his life or had to overcome something. And this is the first time where he is trying to face adversity and he is not handling it well.
It's very, very possible. I mean, that's who he is. That realization, came alive to me saying, wow, I wonder if he really is that arrogant guy just making excuses. And that reminds me of Ryan Leaf. That was the guy in my past that would come in, and Ryan Leaf was a lot more vocal about it. He would literally in the press conferences scream and yell and cry and make excuses. Zach was able to get coached well enough in most of the press conferences not to do that. But the first time they caught him offhand, where he wasn't prepped to come in with, what he was going to say, and he was just right after the game, he kind of sounded like Ryan Leaf.
Yeah. Is Mike White the answer? Because I don't really think he's the answer either. Yeah, to me, we've seen a little bit of sample. It's one really, really good game and then not so really good, games, like some bad games.
Yeah, I think Mike White is a good backup quarterback. I think he's a good, I think any team would be okay to have him as a backup quarterback. I think he's the kind of guy you could bring in for 1 to 2 for 3 games. If there's an injury in the middle of the year to your quarterback, if you got a good defense, good running game, whatever, if you put the right team around him, He can manage a game for you and keep you alive and give you a good shot, just what you want from a backup quarterback. He's certainly not the guy you want leading the team. He's not the team that he doesn't appear to be the guy that's going to carry the team and do that extra thing, have that extra juice that you need to actually win big games and really make a real run.
Yeah, you look at it, you look at the AFC, we're watching two quarterbacks right now, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, then you add Patrick Mahomes, and you add Trevor Lawrence. You're going to have to go through a gauntlet of those four guys at the minimum, like that to make it to the Super Bowl. So, like, what do the Jets got to do to get to those levels? Because I think they have a championship defense already.
Yeah, the whole thing about Zach Wilson, the heartbreak in that is that if he was the guy, the Jets probably are primed to make their best run since I've ever been a fan. Like even the Parcells and the Rex Ryan years, they never had the young nucleus, like the picks, these players that Joe Douglas has brought into the organization.
They slaughtered. I give them A+++ this year in the draft for they hit on every pick.
Yeah, I mean they've never had a nucleus like this of young players, and that nowadays with the salary cap and everything like that, that's exactly what you need. You need those young players that are not paying a lot.
Hence the Bengals, right? Burrow's on a rookie contract. Chase is on a rookie contract. Higgins on a rookie contract. Exactly. We'll go spin and keep a couple guys. The Bills, same thing. Josh Allen's on a rookie still. Oh, I think he got a new deal done, but Mahomes, the Chiefs, same way until they got their deals done.
Yeah, you want to build it that way. And then when you finally do have to pay your quarterback, at least it didn't come with having to pay them and trade like 3 first-round picks like we saw Cleveland and we saw Denver do, because a lot of people saying for the Jets, like if Lamar was to become available, the Jets should trade 3 number ones. And I'm like, yeah, but then you're paying a guy $50 million a year and you're giving away 3 number ones. What happens is, we might become a playoff team, but are we going to be able to?
Are you a Lamar Jackson? You have to look in the mirror. Are you a Lamar Jackson away from the Super Bowl?
Right. But with minusing what it would cost to get him, because the Jets, where they are with the salary cap, they would have to cut and release like 4 or 5 different guys, and you wouldn't have the money to replace them, and you wouldn't have the first round picks for the next 3 years to replace them. So then the question becomes, maybe he'll get us good enough to make the playoffs.
Then you're the Ravens, right? Then you're just the Ravens?
We're just the Ravens. And that's my point to all Jet fans. I'm like, are we really going to be able to put a roster around him that's any better than the roster the Ravens put around him? And I don't think we would. I don't think we'd be able to. We have to sign Quinnen Williams. Otherwise, that top championship defense goes away because he's the heart of it.
Yep, 100%. And he's come along. It's been a gradual, slow build for him. What was he, like a top 5 pick? And this year, I mean, he played the Green Bay Packers, and we made him look like Warren. He looked like Warren Sapp against us. I mean, Hall of Fame type defensive tackle. He made every play there was.
Yeah, he definitely stepped up. This was his breakout year for sure. We saw it building slowly. There were little nagging things like a foot injury and things that held him back. And we all, they knew he was healthy going into this year. The conversation was, this is his contract year. This is the year where we see if he's really going to live up to to his draft pick. And he answered the bell for sure.
Yeah, you have him on that defense. Then you have Sauce Gardner as well, who's probably going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. You have Wilson on the offense. Breece Hall could have been Offensive Rookie of the Year had he not got hurt. And I felt like that was where the Jets offense kind of started slowly going downhill once he tore his ACL.
Yeah, I think that in combination with AVT, who's their best offensive lineman. He at the time, AVT was literally, he played left tackle, right tackle twice in a row after starting the season as guard. He played well no matter where they put him, so he was versatile. He was playing at a Pro Bowl level at guard before they moved him. And then he was playing at wherever they threw him at tackle, he was doing the job. He actually went down and was lost for the season within 15 minutes of when Breece Hall was. So technically, because that was right before Garrett Wilson really stepped up. I mean, he had some good games. But at that moment, those were actually the 2 best offensive players on the Jets team, was AVT and Breece Hall. And they both went down within 15 minutes for the season. And that really was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, and then you add in the quarterback mix as well. That's up in shambles. I think one guy you need to let go. You could probably let Corey Davis go. What's the status of Elijah Moore? He seemed to be asked for a trade. He hasn't really. He had high expectations. I felt like this year and even last year, and just hasn't quite met them.
I think that he will be okay with a new offensive coordinator. Now, it depends on who the Jets go out and get. We were actually laughing the other day. Some people were saying, "Oh, Greg Roman from Baltimore."
Why? Why Greg Roman?
I mean, Elijah Moore would probably burn down MetLife Stadium. You're talking about going from one offensive coordinator that didn't know how to utilize them to an offensive coordinator that basically doesn't use wide receivers. So obviously we wouldn't want that, but I think Elijah Moore still could potentially, and we're going to find out how much of it was on Mike LaFleur, like when a new coordinator comes in. But a lot of Jet fans feel when you watch Elijah Moore play and you watch the film, the big battle cry and everyone's yelling about is when you watch the film, he's always open. I mean, he really is open. But the problem is the Jets didn't have a quarterback that would go through one read. It was like one read, which would normally be Garrett Wilson. And if he wasn't there, if the quarterback didn't feel confident, it was a drop. It was a check down.
Yeah.
And that killed anybody playing receiver for the Jets. Their tight ends never really got into the games as much as people thought Conklin would. And Elijah Moore was
They went out and paid big money for TJ Uzama from the Bengals.
Right, and he was supposed to be more of the blocking guy. Like they were going to use Conklin more as the receiver and Uzama more as the blocker. They like to do two tight, they like to play two. So the passing part never worked out. Conklin had some drops. People think it was because he just wasn't used enough. He was shocked when the ball was thrown to him because again, it was so often that they would just do one read, check down, and the hope at least is that what's going to fix it is that Mike LaFleur really was the problem, and they're going to get a coordinator in there that really knows how to utilize their receivers, because Elijah Moore is not the only one Jet fans cry about. There's a lot of Jet fans that still really like Denzel Mims and feel that Mike LaFleur was ruining his career, and they're not knowing how to utilize him because, it's really hard to understand how you could have a 6'3", 6'4" wide receiver who runs a 4.4. Even a 4.3 at the combines. How do you not utilize a weapon like that?
Yeah.
And his rookie year, Mims had explosive plays where everybody was very excited about Mims. We thought he was going to be our number one wide receiver. And then Mike LaFleur comes to town, and suddenly Mims is not even good enough to be on the roster. Like they're literally practice squatting him. He's not even dressing.
From what I understand is that Mike LaFleur wasn't supposed to be the OC, right? It was supposed to be another guy, and he passed. Did I read that? Did I read that right?
Mike LaFleur was going to be the offensive coordinator, but Greg Knapp was supposed to be the quarterback coach. He was in charge of Zach. He was going to be in charge of a lot of the passing game, and he was going to be kind of like the father watching over the kids. He was that veteran guy. You're coming in with a rookie head coach. You're coming in with a young rookie offensive coordinator, young rookie, first-time defensive coordinator. Greg Knapp was supposed to be the adult in the room. He was supposed to be that grown-up in the room. And that tragedy was meaningful. Like people think, because people don't really, outside the know of football, don't understand the importance that different people can have. They're just thinking, oh, that's just a backup, assistant offensive coach. Why are the Jets blaming anything on that? What's the big deal of that? Well, the big deal was he was the adult in the room. He was the one that was supposed to be looking over LaFleur and making these decisions and really taking care of Zach Wilson. And as it turns out, you could see Knapp never would have had a toxic locker room the way the Jets have apparently had. Like that never would have happened with Knapp. If you look at his history,
who do you blame that toxicity on? Then is that Bob Saleh? Because to me, Bob Saleh seems like he runs a tight ship. But if you're talking all this toxicity, who's to blame for that?
Well, if the reports are true, I mean, obviously it always goes up to the head coach. I mean, Robert Saleh is going to have to take some ownership, and some accountability for it. But I mean, the number one person you're going to look at is the offensive coordinator. And that's the person who Elijah Moore supposedly cursed out and had to go home because of it. And that's the guy who, that was the play caller. That was the play caller who was calling like just baffling plays. Like the Jets would walk down the field, they're looking great, they get inside the 20, and suddenly he brings in a backup quarterback in Streveler and starts getting all cute with these fancy plays. And it was time after time. It was a repetitive thing. The Jets would go down inside the 20, they would bring in weird personnels, he'd get cute, try to get fancy. The play would go backwards, stop the momentum of the drive, and it was getting to a point where it was actually very predictable. And again, another thing that fans were frustrated with. You bring in a guy like Berrios for this gadget play.
And
Right, and everybody is really just screaming, well, why wouldn't you use Elijah Moore, who's clearly more talented? He's faster, he's stronger, he's a much better football player. And you're bringing in these gadget guys instead of getting the ball to the guy we all want to see play that you drafted, that you spent a second round, early round draft pick on. Why are we not looking at this guy? Why are we not utilizing him? And that was a big question Jet fans have.
I was just watching the big pass interference play. Bengals got it 1st and goal, already up 2 scores. They score a touchdown here. It's over with 12 minutes to go.
Yeah, they're about to lock this one down if they score here for sure.
So who do you want the Jets to be their new OC? If Matt LaFleur is their, the scapegoat this year, who do you want to be the OC next year?
I wanted it to be Bevel but he decided he doesn't want to. He's not interested in any positions. He's staying in Miami, the passing coordinator for Miami, because he goes back with Robert Saleh all the way to the days of Seattle. He was the discoverer of Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
He not only he discovered him and then developed him. So there's a lot to be said about that. Plus tons and tons of experience. I know there's some fans that didn't want him because they blame him for the touchdown, the
Super Bowl play. Yeah.
I think it's absolutely nonsense to look at one play and try to judge a coach.
A whole career off of it, right?
Yeah, whole career on one play and ignore everything else he's ever done because of one play that went wrong. And a lot of people still debate to this day whether it was Pete Carroll, or Russell Wilson, and all. Like nobody knows for sure exactly how that play, how it came down to that play.
According to Marshawn, and Marshawn has kind of said that was something like front office type, right? Like, I mean, he was about to be a free agent, done. Like they could put the let Russ throw this touchdown, then it would elevate him and he could be their franchise guy. So it was kind of like a Pete Carroll, Bevel, all of it together. Marshawn felt everybody was just against him in the defense. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a ridiculous call. I remember it. It was a ridiculous call. Because I remember that nobody could stop Lynch. And the rule is if you're effectively running the ball, in my mind, the rule is
don't stop.
Until the defense proves they can stop it, you keep running it.
Right.
Safest thing to do. And as it turns out, really would have been the safer thing to do.
Who's the starting? So who else besides Bevel would you like?
I know he gets a really bad rap from Denver, Nathaniel Hackett, because of the disastrous year he had as a head coach. But I think what people forget is a head coach is a very, very different job than an offensive coordinator. And it's kind of like in any industry, think of any industry, to get to the highest level, to whatever level you fail at. Before you got to that level that you fail at, typically you were very good at the level before it. So Nathaniel Hackett was having a great career, and that's why he got the head coaching job for Denver. Because
I think they thought they could get Aaron too, right? Like they thought they could get Aaron Rodgers if they got Hackett all at the same time.
That was the rumor. I don't know how much I buy into that, but I mean, I guess it's possible they were thinking that. And I think the Jets might think the same way. Like maybe if they get him as the offensive coordinator, it puts them in a position to be able to get Aaron Rodgers, who might leave Green Bay. I don't think. I've heard it for 3 years, and
I don't think it's retirement or Green Bay. I think for Aaron.
Yeah, I feel that way just because of the way the contract is. I don't see any way that Green Bay can trade him and then take $23 million dead cap hit 2 years in a row.
No, they can't. It's just the way the contract is. I mean, and he's getting to get paid $60 million if he comes back. I mean, I know he's already made a lot of money, but to turn down and say, "Hey, I don't want to play for $60 million," that's just insane amount to me.
Yeah, and again, he's played this game for the last, this is the third year in a row that we're playing the game of where's Aaron Rodgers going to play.
Well, and the reason that is, and I was on a podcast, I said that it's him as part of it, but ownership, not really ownership because I know they don't have an owner, but the GM, when they drafted Jordan Love, they sped the clock up, right? Like before that season, there was no talk of him retirement or him, wavering, right? They were actually just coming off the NFC Championship game where they got blown out by the 49ers. And so then they go draft instead of going, we should have traded to get up Justin Jefferson. I mean, the draft of all draft blunders there, but they draft Jordan Love instead, and that sped the clock up. Well, now is he not going to? Is he? Of course, you're going to be pissed off because he wasn't talking about retirement prior to that trade.
Yeah, definitely. They should have been looking at more help for him. I think that's what he was mad. They should be getting him a wide receiver, or, something that's going to help him offensively.
We gave up like 400 rushing yards, to the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. I don't know. Go get some defense. Go get, another wide receiver, offensive, somebody to help him out.
Absolutely. There was other ways they could have went, and I think I'll never forget the reaction of Tom Grassi when I turned right to his channel to see how he reacted to that pick, and he had to leave and shut off his stream, and I think he broke some things in his studio when they made.
I was cussing and myself. I mean, I wasn't quite. I didn't had a show yet. I've only been going at it for about 6 months now, so I was pretty PO'd about it. I mean, I was cussing and cursing, and my wife she looks at me. She said, "I don't know why you're cussing and cursing now." And she's like, "In 5 years, you're going to be rooting for that guy." So here we are, year 4, and it's almost, not quite there yet, but almost.
Yeah, it's just that it was nothing personal against Jordan Love. It was just the situation for a team. It's like that's not the time we needed to trade up to the first round and pick a quarterback.
Right, and that's exactly how I feel. It wasn't the right time, right place, and I don't know if he's the right guy.
Right. Well, you never know with a quarterback. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing I've learned as a football fan above everything else. You never really know. And such a high percentage of quarterbacks fail. And that's what makes it so amazing what Green Bay has done when you think about Brett Favre, acquiring him from Atlanta and then replacing him with Aaron Rodgers. It's an incredibly, incredibly fantastic achievement as an organization to do that.
Yeah, 30 years worth of good quarterback play.
Yeah. I mean, no one knows that better than a Jet fan because here I am, plus 40 plus years as a fan, and we've had good ones, but never anything close to a Brett Favre.
You got Brett Favre, and that wasn't even his. Even he had a better year after he left with the Vikings.
Yeah, we got him the injury. We got him the injury year. He played 10 games for us and got hurt. So
with the Jets, he didn't play that great. And then he went to Minnesota and had almost an MVP type year.
Yeah, he had us at like 8-1 or something, but then he got hurt.
And then he got hurt and just played. He played hurt. Yeah. We could go through a long lines of who the Jets quarterback is, and so next year, week 1 of the 2023-2024 season, who is the Jets quarterback?
I hope, but it's going to be competitive. Derek Carr.
Derek Carr. You want Derek Carr as a New York Jet?
Because I don't think it would, not because he's the best player. I don't think he's better than Lamar Jackson or Aaron Rodgers or anything like that. But I think it's the most realistic. You're asking me who's the Jet. I think it's the most realistic based on it. JD loves draft capital, and I don't think that Derek Carr is going to cost draft capital. I think it's going to be more about money.
I think he's going to be cut.
Yeah, I think that because they have until February 15th. Otherwise, they're locked into $40 million. So I think they have no choice but to cut him. They have very little leverage. Maybe you see the Jets or a team come in, offer a 5th or a 4th round pick just to beat out the competition and say, we're going to end it right now. We're going to give up some draft capital. And as long as Derek Carr approves the trade, we'll do a sign and trade kind of thing and get this guy locked in so we don't have to compete with the other guys. But then the question to that is, why would his agent do that? Why would his agent?
He has a no trade clause.
He has a no trade clause. Agent, if I'm his agent, I'm saying, don't let them trade you. Deny every trade and let it go to a bid.
Yeah, and then
So
go play if you want to play for the highest bidder, slash a team that I think he also wants to play for a winner. Are the Jets a Derek Carr quarterback away though? Like that's.
I think that maybe it's hard to know. It's hard to know because I think that we have to understand these young players for the Jets are still developing. So the question starts to become, how good could Breece Hall really have been? Was he going to keep getting better? He's only in his rookie year. It was 8 games in. When you saw him in that Green Bay game, less than 10 games as a starter. We don't know how high he was going to rise. And we don't know in the future how high he's going to rise. Will he come back the same? How long is it going to take? But this is a guy that I thought could be a top 3 running back potentially. Like his ceiling is undefined.
He was.
Yeah, I have I don't think there's any there's no definition of what his ceiling was. He could have been like Henry, Adrian Peterson. You could think of the biggest names of running back, and I'm not saying it'd be crazy to you can never predict or say someone is one of those guys, but there's certainly no evidence that he couldn't become that. Like he was on the path of special. So if he comes back and he's special, and the offensive line gets healthy for the Jets, because we still haven't seen them with a healthy offensive line. They've got, we've been just barraged with just horrendous injuries to our tackles. If we get Mekhi Becton back and, AVT comes back healthy, the Jets are probably going to use their first round pick, their 13th pick on a tackle. If we suddenly get really strong on the offensive line, you get Breece Hall back, you got Garrett Wilson, you got the tight ends. Suddenly Derek Carr, if you look for the Raiders, when did he ever have a top 5 defense?
True.
So never. I don't know what the ceiling is. I know that we'd be a playoff team. I feel that. I believe we'd be a playoff team. And then I think we would find out what is stopping us from going that extra, getting over that extra hurdle. But, Derek Carr, according to DVOA, before this year with this coach, before that, for 4 years in a row, he's a top 10 NFL quarterback. And there's only 3 or 4 elite guys. So you can't,
It's funny that you say that because he gets so much hate, right? Like I don't know if it's like the media or fans or what. Maybe it's because he's hadn't never really been to the playoffs until last year. Like he just Derek Carr gets so much he's not. People don't think a top 10 quarterback when they think Derek Carr, right?
Right. Well, they ignore the fact that and I don't want to make excuses for him, but there are realities. Like he's had 3 to 4 different coaches.
Yeah,
tremendous controversy. Right, guys. A coach out fired, the way Gruden went out.
A receiver kills somebody.
Losing your young receiver, and then most years, I think on average, if you average the years he's been a quarterback for the Raiders and you average their defensive ranking, they're 26 in the NFL.
It doesn't help when they can't draft and develop players. I don't think there's a player left hardly on the John Gruden drafted that's left on that roster.
Yeah, and we have right here in New York a quarterback. We had a quarterback playing in New York on the other team, the Giants, that wasn't any better than Derek Carr, I don't think, and Eli Manning. And he has 2 Super Bowl rings because the Giants gave him an incredible defense and a really good running game and offensive line. And Eli Manning was a top 10. He wasn't elite, but he was a top 10 quarterback. He was number 10 or number 9. He was just a very good, solid NFL quarterback. And I think Derek Carr could be a similar story to Eli Manning if you put the right team around him, if you gave him a championship level defense, a great running game.
A guy that I like he's already kind of been there is Jimmy G. Right? Jimmy G is the same, very similar. And Bob Saleh knows him from the 49er days. So it's Jimmy. I think Jimmy G makes a lot of sense to me for the Jets. Does it for you?
Oh, absolutely. Especially if depending on the coordinator, for sure, if they stick with the West Coast offense, any variant, it doesn't even have to be the Shanahan, West Coast offense, but any version of the West Coast offense, because there's really only 3 major styles of offense, right? When you break it down, I think that he's a fit. He's obviously a fit. He knows the coaching staff, and he knows the offense. He also looked pretty good in New England for whatever offense they run. So, depending on who they get at offensive coordinator, he can fit into a lot of places. And just like you said, he was a play away in the Super Bowl. He missed an open receiver.
Miss George Kittle. Yeah, he put
Yeah.
that ball on the money on George Kittle. Game over.
And people are like, well, he wasn't a good enough quarterback to do that, though. And I'm like, that's nonsense. He had that bad.
Everybody's missed a throw. You know what I mean? Aaron Rodgers to me is the greatest thrower of football, and I've seen him miss throws. You know what I mean?
It was horrible timing that he happened to miss that throw at that moment. But the reality is, we've seen him make that throw many, many times. And if he makes the throw at that moment, the Niners win the Super Bowl, and nobody is talking about how Jimmy G can't win a Super Bowl. I think Jimmy G proved the opposite. He proved he can win a Super Bowl. It wasn't meant to be that day, but he certainly proved he could do it.
Some of that's on Shanahan too, because again, that's the second Super Bowl he had a huge lead and was part of, and let that team come back, another team come back by slinging it a little bit too much instead of running it.
Yeah, you got to manage the clock better, and you got to find a way to keep the players focused too, like that. You know, the great coaches to me, and I think Green Bay has had them, and you know, had teams like this, is you don't start playing not to lose. You put the nail in the coffin.
It just came across my Facebook timeline memories or whatever when we lost to the Seahawks. I think we were up 17 points in that game, and we end up blowing it. And I drank myself into a stupor in the NFC Championship game, which was the game Seattle went on. We just talked about the Darrell Bevel game where the Patriots won that game.
Yeah, I think I love old school. I go back to Coach Walsh for the Niners.
Yeah.
That man never stopped scoring. He never stopped scoring. He could be up by 3 touchdowns. The game wasn't over. He was still scoring. He was still
stop us, right? They get paid. But people, why are you doing that? Well, first of all, we're all professionals here. You get paid to stop me, so try to stop me.
Right. It's absolutely ridiculous for any fan. I don't think the players do it. I think it's more of a fan thing, because it would be ridiculous for the players. I mean, the players will note it and say, oh, they put 50 on us last time, we're going to get revenge. That's fine. That's competitive in this sports. But when fans get mad and angry and say, I don't like that coach, he runs up the score, it's like, hey, man, it's like,
that's what you get paid to do.
Yeah, these are professionals. Like, they're not paid to take it easy and to stop crying. I mean, and it's dangerous to stop doing that. It's dangerous. You get injured when you do that.
Right. I mean, as long as as long as it's smart, but you can't, if you're running the ball and the guy breaks off for 30, what are you telling them? Hey, get out of bounds or slide down. No, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you got to keep playing football. You got to keep playing. But Walsh was like, I'm up by 10 in the fourth quarter. I've seen a million teams get conservative and then blow that 10-point lead. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do the same thing that's been working all day. I'm going to keep doing what's working. I'm not going to let the other team off easy. I'm not going to give them, garbage time defense, prevent defense, so they can walk down the field and get back into the game. Because I've seen that. I mean, you've been a fan for many years too. How many times have you seen teams do that?
Exactly. Too many. Jermey, I got 2 more questions. We'll get out of here. Favorite Jet of all time? Is it Curtis Martin? Is it, somebody on those lines?
It's funny.
You can pick 2, one offensive, one defensive if you want.
Okay, that's great. That's great. I'll say offensive. My favorite offensive player of all time was man, it's tough. I don't think about it often. I'm going to say, I'm thinking back to when I was a kid. I loved Freeman McNeil. He was, Curtis Martin before we had Curtis Martin. That was our homegrown running back who could do everything. He was just a machine. He was great. If he was in a better situation, I think he could have, been one of those names like Dorsett and all the top guys in the 80s. But he played for the Jets, so he never got the recognition. But he was a great, great running back. He really was. He was an awesome star. And then defensively, a lot of people haven't heard of this guy, but I love this guy. His name was James Hasty.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of James Hastings, yeah.
He was a defensive back, and I just loved him because when the Jets stunk, when he was in the early 90s, and there was nothing to root for, this guy would come out. It didn't matter if they were losing by 20 points. He never shut up. He talked trash all game long. He would knock down, deflect passes. He could be down 20 points, but he's in the face of the receiver. And it was the most entertaining thing to watch because we would just laugh and be like, this guy just doesn't shut up. And I just enjoyed watching him play. Number 40, James Hasty. He ended up going to Kansas City after the Jets.
Yeah, I think I kind of remember him picking up in KC from there, living here in Missouri. So let me ask you this: this game looks like it's Bengals going to work here. They just stopped the Bills on a 4th down and goal, up 17 with about 7 minutes left. I don't see the Bills coming back. Bengals Chiefs next week. Who you like? Who you like in Kansas City at Arrowhead? The Bengals, the last 2 years have lost to the Bengals 3 times.
I know it's going to be a great game. It's a hard game to call. I'm not sure either way, but I will. If I had to, I think I'm going to go with Kansas City. I think if I had to go with one, but to me, it's super, super close. Like I'm talking about to the wire game. If Cincinnati beats them, I don't even consider it an upset. It's like I think it's a toss-up type game. But I'll always just clinch on a little bit to Patrick Mahomes, but not as much as Mahomes because I do like Joe Burrow and I think he's awesome. I'll go with Andy Reid.
Yeah, Andy Reid. I mean, Andy Reid seems to get better and better, right? Like I feel like when he was in Philadelphia, he was almost kind of like he would like, I don't know, it's just like when they got to the big game, the lights were too bright or something. And now you pair him up with Patty Mahomes, and that he just it's clicking for him. He just continues. I mean, he's got to be coaching for almost 40 years as a head coach, 20 years, I would think, between Philly and the Chiefs. And he's still designing new plays, and he's still going with it.
That's amazing.
Who you like in the NFC in this next game? 49ers, Cowboys, an old 90s rivalry, 80s rivalry, and here we are again. 49ers, I forgot that the 49ers ended the Cowboys season last year. Do you see it happening the same way?
I'm rooting for the 49ers. I have another channel. Outside of my Jets Chaos channel, I have a channel I'm starting up and just ramping up called 49ers Chaos because I live out here in Sacramento now. And the Niners are pretty much the local team. Most people out here like the Niners. And since they don't play my Jets very often, I figure, hey man, I want to cover, have another channel and cover a team from the West. So I'm rooting for them. I've gotten to like the team. It's been interesting rooting for the Niners and the Jets. The Niners are a secondary team because they run the same offense and the same defense. So they
got the same, right? They're similar. I mean, Bob Sala, 49er guy. A lot of those guys run together. Yep.
Yep. It's very ancestral. So it's fun to do that. So I'm pulling for the Niners.
You got 49ers and Chiefs Super Bowl, or you got like somebody you like the Eagles?
I'm thinking 49ers Chiefs Super Bowl.
Who you got winning?
I think the Chiefs are going to win. I think that's where I think Andy Reid will figure out how to shut down that rookie quarterback the Niners got.
All right. I got to ask one question. How the hell does a kid from the Bronx end up all the way out in California then?
I moved out for work years and years ago. My brother was out here and I said, I love it out there. I went into the Bay Area in 96 and I lived for like 5 years in California. And then I went back, met my wife, and on the East Coast, we went for vacation here to visit friends, and I took her around California, and she loved it. And they convinced us. Our friends in Sacramento said, move out. And 10 months later, we both were in the type of careers. I'm in education. She's in healthcare, where it was really easy to switch. We can easily get jobs. And we took our dog, got in the car, and just drove across the country.
Hey, there you go. Hey, they couldn't convince you to drop the Jets total and root for the 49ers, though.
Never.
Can take boy out of Brooklyn, but you can't take Brooklyn out of the boy, right?
Exactly right.
Hey, Jeremy, go ahead and tell us where we can all find the Jets Chaos and get those plugs in before we get you out of here.
Yeah, just on YouTube, type in Jets Chaos, and I'm there. If you are more of a fan of the NFC or you want to watch me on both, I'm just getting started really building up the other channel, but 49ers Chaos. You can find me there too on YouTube, and then it's just at Jermey Krevat 2 on Twitter.
All right. And what do you got coming out? You got anything coming out with this week?
Yeah, well, tonight I'm actually doing something for any NFL fan. I got this guy, Dom C. He's a writer for greenbeanjetsfan.com. And he's actually going to the pro day or the college senior bowl. He has press access. He wrote an entire draft manual, and every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on my channel, on Jets Chaos or 49ers Chaos, position by position, he's ranking the top 10. So anybody who wants to learn about the players coming out into the draft, it doesn't matter who you're a fan of. If you're just interested, we're actually doing the safeties tonight. So we're doing the top 10 safeties coming into the draft.
So if your team's in need of a safety, hey, check out Jeremy and the Jet Chaos podcast tonight. If your team's in need of a safety, Jeremy, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you, everybody. Check that out. Looks like Bengals are wrapping this one up. Bengals-Chiefs rematch of the AFC Championship game. Chiefs fans, Daddy's coming home, baby. Joe Burrow's coming home. You better be scared. I can't wait to watch next Sunday as the Bengals-Chiefs in a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game. We'll see if it's the same result. NFC getting ready to be decided here as the 49ers Cowboys are getting ready to kick off here in about 30 minutes or so. Jeremy, thanks a lot. I'm going to hit that outro, baby. This has been another great episode of the Bodkin Show. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, share, be a friend, tell a friend. We'll catch you back tomorrow night, Bodkins and Buffoon, right here on the Bodkins channel. And Let's Talk Sports, folks. We'll see you then.